Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick.
I'm now joined by a resident economist, Marc Coleman. Marc, at the very latest, the next general election will take place in March 2025. So what, in your view, should the current government focus their attention on most in the intervening period?
Karl, it's an excellent question, and I'm thinking of that old phrase that sailors used to say when they were out stranded in the mid-Atlantic and they were gasping for water and thirst after a couple of days of drought. And they would say, water, water everywhere, but not a drop to drink, because obviously the only water they had was salt water and they couldn't drink that. The government must have the same feeling in that the estimates of the surpluses in the coming years range as high as 65 billion euros. So there's money everywhere, but the problem is the government is having great difficulty spending it. Now, I wouldn't advise any government to splash the cash in the run-up to an election because it's not very good policy to do so. But all's fair in love, war and play, and all political parties have a valid expectation that they can splash the cash. But the problem is, Karl, as you've rightly pointed out, there's nary 21 months to go, and the key obstacle the government faces is the bottlenecks in getting that money through. Now, there are electoral reasons for getting it spent to maximise the chances of government TDs getting re-elected, which is that's their job in a way. But there are also good public policy reasons for them to do so. We've a housing crisis. And we've many areas, despite waste in many areas of government spending, we've many areas where spending is not high enough, and housing is one of them. But the problem is we have logistical and legal logjams that are preventing that money getting through. And one example is the delay in the development of housing. And that's coming from two problems. One, we have a planning legislation that probably hasn't been well designed. It causes developers to have to go through several hoops to get planning permission, to get sewage permission, to get electricity and utility supply. There's no concurrence in the system. And what I mean by concurrence is developers find it difficult to apply for multiple permissions at the same time. They have to go at it one after another, which obviously delays matters. Another problem is that the housing crisis has been delayed by sporadic, almost, you might call it guerrilla warfare between developers and residents associations. The government's response has been to call them all NIMBYs. That's not working, Karl. So I think taking a cue from a very excellent National Infrastructure Summit that was organised by the Business Post in May, where speaker after speaker said, look, instead of this war of attrition between developers and residents associations, the government needs to sit down with both and develop a system of partnership. So in return for the developers getting reforms that fast-track the developments to roll out the infrastructure we need in the next 2 years, they have to accept that residents in local areas need to be consulted on developments. We're not talking about several bites at the cherry. We're not talking about expensive judicial reviews, but surely there is a case for giving residents an early and significant bite at the cherry that enables them to modify the worst excesses of development as they see it, and to make sure that if there is development in their area, that infrastructure is rolled out, schools are provided, traffic is managed, and that whatever property is provided is affordable. If we could get that partnership system going in the next couple of months, it will replace a lot of heat with a lot of light. And I think it will assist the government to get those infrastructures projects up and running and within sight of completion by the next election. There are other processes I could talk about, but I think they're the key ones. And I would say in relation to consulting residents, we already know that local area plans have a strong element of public consultation, and it works very well. So we can apply good systems, efficient systems of consultation, and it's replacing haste with speed. By not consulting people, you actually get delays, you get wars of attrition, you get legal objectives. I think if we go down the route of having a proper system of consultation, properly implemented by local government, we'll get a lot of this done faster. And I think government TDs will be able to go into the next election with a lot more confidence that they have something to show for 5 years in government.
Well, if you've just tuned in, that was our resident economist, Marc Coleman. And Marc will be joining us again on next Saturday's show. We're almost at closing time here at Business Matters, but before we go, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank my production team, my guests for their contribution, and especially you as always for listening. Join me again next Saturday morning when we'll hear more from the world of business. But until then, have a great week.
Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick.